Well, here we go. In the shop. We'll put the motor on the device. Just to think, I used to pick these things up until like 2 years ago. No more. All right, now I'm going to proceed to pull off the stuff, recoil head, carburetor and that stuff, and continue. Always nice to see new coils. Just took the flywheel off. Great sign. OMC coils too, so they're, you know, I don't know, $30 a piece, $25 if you get a good deal on eBay for the original ones. I'll take it. Keep forging on. Every outboard mechanic's got to get one of these. So I got 3 of them. I'll be afraid they're cheap, but it's a must. These screws have been in since 1956, so. And that's how I get the screws out that are stubborn. So I like to take the engine apart as much as I can before I disconnect the power head from the midsection. It's much easier, and you just, you know, put it on take the power head off, and then just do all this on the bench. I find it's a natural stand. So do everything you can. That's in my opinion. You know, pretty much you can do what you want to do, but I like to take everything apart I can when it's on the midsection. Just stands to reason. Well, I just took the manifold off, and she's all powdered and salted up. But it's not intimidating to me. I'm so used to seeing this. Doesn't really mean anything, folks. It's nice to see it nice and clean, but salt, a little salt never hurt anybody. Oh, wait a minute, it's not good for your heart. But anyway, it cleans up really easy. I'm so used to this through the years, seeing motors like this. But you'll see as it goes on that this motor is definitely salvageable. Well, there's no question this went underwater. That's one thing good about it. Salt water too. Here's the reeds. I popped the reed plate off. You can see all the rust and shit inside. But again, looks are deceiving, very deceiving with these engines. The main thing I'm concerned about, if the crankshaft's good, because if somebody doesn't have a lot of parts, this would be pretty hard to, well, you can get a crank on eBay pretty reasonable. $40, $50, you get a nice used crank. But anyway, this is not a problem yet. Torch time. These bottom screws probably been in since 1956. A lot of salt water splashed up through the years. Got to heat them really good. These are only 1024 screws and stacked like a pretzel. I take my time. The first time I had to use a torch up till now, it's doing pretty good. And that's what you do. You go around, get them all out. One here, one here, one here, one here, and there's two on the side. And then there's one in the very front part of the pan under the carburetor. All the low pans will come off and you get to the three nuts in the front to get the power head off. And these screws on the bottom. The screws on the bottom, they call them cheese head screws because they look like a head of cheese. So, unfortunately, sometimes you get lucky they come out, sometimes they don't. You got to cut them up, cut the heads off. But most times I get them out. I'll show you my setup. These pliers come in handy too, folks. For the old wire snaps they had for the fuel lines. Got a couple pairs of these. Come in very handy. If you do a lot of this, if you don't do a lot of it, you know, a needle nose will work. Here's what I use to get the cheese head screws on the bottom. There's 5 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then there's 3 nuts underneath the where the carburetor bolts flange to the midsection. There's 3 nuts there. But this is what I use. So you get a lot of leverage. And I got a wrench I use on the and this is how I get them out. First one came out easy, no heat. So I'll keep going on and see if I get all 5 of them out. Or the other 4 and see what happens. Hopefully they'll come out. Sometimes the heads are so rusted there's no slot left for the screw, but I haven't seen that too much lately. It's usually the later 25s, they had that little 5/16 head bolt. They usually rust away. But anyway, that's another story. So all 5 screws came right out. No problem. Didn't even have to use an impact or nothing. Again, these are called clutch head screws. Not clutch head, cheese head. Because they look like those big round chunks of cheese. So you got the 3 nuts here. I took the 5 cheese head screws out from the bottom. And there's 3 nuts. One here. There's another one underneath here. And another one on the opposite side. 1/2-inch box wrench gets them. So 8 screws hold the power head to the midsection. So I'm moving along here. I popped the power head off. Came right off. Wasn't stuck. Sometimes the drive shafts get stuck in the bottom of the crank. But this one's really good. Again, I'm hoping the crank is good. Even though I got plenty of cranks, I still hope every time I take a motor apart that the crank is good. And the rods too, but we'll see. Inside the block here, there's 2 Allen key cap screws with washers. And it has 6 bolts along here. 1/2-inch with washers too. So there's 8 altogether. So you pop all them out. And then there's an oil drain line that runs from the top bearing, top of the block to the bottom of the block. It's a scavenge line. Oil just bleeds down, excess oil will bleed down from the top to the bottom. So you got to pop that off before you separate the block. I already loosened it up because I don't have fast forward. So I got to kind of shut the camera on and off. So I'll get that off and I'll turn it back on. Can't see. Oh, you gotta be so patient. Next is 2 tapered dowel pins, one on each side of the block. On the top, there's one right here, and I'll show you the one on the other side. So I just take a drift and I knock it out. They always come out to the front of the block because they're tapered. Tapered. Small side goes to the back, but always knock them out forward. This, if you don't, you can damage the block. And then I flip it around, I'll do the other one. There's 2. I think the other one's on the bottom. Those are kind of line-up pins before you put the bolts in. Because each one of these power heads is line board as an assembly. And that's why they say you're really not supposed to change block halves. Keep them together if you can. Because they're line board as an assembly. So here's the other one right here. Just make sure your punch is smaller than the diameter of the pin. And that's pin number 2. Tapered dowel pin. Okay, so now I'm going to split the block and I'll get you back. Well, remember I was saying looks are deceiving? Well, here we go. Now you've seen all the crud and crap that was inside here, the reed area, what the reeds look like. And you saw the back of the cylinders earlier in the video. So I just separated the block. And look at that crank. I mean, it looks really good. I was expecting it to be all rusty and totally shot. So I'm going to move on. I'm going to take the caps off and check the needle bearings and the cages and see how these... that's right, they didn't have a lower bearing in 56. Came out in 57. 15s had no bearing on the bottom. Well, they had a inserted Babbitt bearing in the block. So they added that in 57. Yeah, 57. So now I'm going to take the rod caps off and check it out. Hopefully the crank is good. Then I just have to wrap the pistons out, maybe press them out. We'll see. I'll get back. Well, Lady Luck is with me. I took number 2 cap off. And she looks good inside. Just very little light rust here. Looks like it's polished. I'm sure glad I decided to take this motor before winter setting, because I had this outside with no cover. And the cylinder head was loose, so I could have, another 4 or 5 months over the winter, could have destroyed this. But now I got, this motor has potential, so I'm psyched. Now I'm going to check out number 1, then see if the bearings, the 2 bearings, the middle bearing and the upper bearing turn. I'm sure they're gonna. They look like they're new. So then I'll proceed to take the pistons out and check it out. Probably just have to clean the pistons up, hone the cylinders, just like I did the Salty Dog last year. So we'll see what happens. Well, I'll use a magnet to pull the bearings off as I take them apart, so I don't lose any. It should be 15 on each journal. And I keep them separate and they'll go back in the same cylinder. So these little cat food containers come in pretty handy. I got hundreds of them. I save them. I don't throw them out. So I'll proceed to take all the bearings off and hopefully don't drop any. And the cages, I want to show you something with the cages too. Let me get this totally apart, then I'll show you. Again, 15 needles on each journal, and don't mix them up. Same with the rod caps. So the crank is good. That makes it a lot easier to rebuild it. This bearing was a little bit stuck. I already took it off, cleaned it, and freed it right up. Freed up with my hands. This one wasn't stuck at all. And the journals look like mirrors. So the crank is good. Same goes for the rods. So they look good. Now I got to proceed to knock the pistons out. What I usually do is I use my tombstone blocks I made. Made these a long time ago, 4 or 5 different sizes. I think this is the 2.5 one, the 1 inch. that's the right one. So I'm going to knock it out with that. Get the camera out of the way, and maybe I'll show you how I'll knock number 1 out. I'll show it to you on camera. Pretty cool. It's about having the tools, folks, you know, and you know, the ambition and drive to do this kind of stuff. It's fun. I like it. It's enjoyable. See if I can do this behind the camera. This method works good as long as the piston moves. If it doesn't move, then you have to use a press. But this is a nice tight fit. They're made to fit the particular rod. And if I have to use my hydraulic press, I have one in my basement. So, but it's moving, so. So that's pretty much what I do. Same thing with number 1 here. Let's see if it moves. It's got to move. A little bit tighter than the other one, but she's going. So that's why I could never free this up with a breaker bar. This one was really dragging. The bottom one, not too bad. You got to be careful. The sharp edges here with your fingers. This used to be longer, but I cut it down to make a project. So the pistons, the rings got to be broke off. Both of them are stuck. The skirts don't look too bad. There's no play. And the bushing, they didn't have needle bearings on the connecting rods in 56. 57 they did. But there's no play in it on both of them. So what I have to do is I made a bunch of small little picks and stuff, and I break the rings out and I replace the rings. Rings you get, you know, maybe $20, $25 a set. I might still have some in stock. The other pistons, actually number 1 came out easier than number 2. What I do is I take Scotch-Brite on the skirts and I wire wheel the heads. You even see there's a gap on these. These rings might come off. I have my tricks of the trade to get them off without breaking them. I really try. If they break, they break. I don't go too crazy. You'll notice on this one here, see, all this will clean right off. This is why it was stuck. It just, into similar metal corrosion between the cast iron and the aluminum over time, swells and locks the pistons up. It was just, again, it was number 1 that was really locked up. What I did too, when I took number 2 out, I put 2 little punch marks on both sides to tell me it's number 2. So I don't mismatch them when I put it back together. But that's it for this video. I'm going to cut it down. It's almost 20 minutes. That's long for me. So I'm going to hone the cylinders tomorrow. A couple other things I have to do here. I broke 2 head bolts when I initially took the head off, so I got to drill these out. What I do is I step drill them 3 times to tap drill size. I forgot what it is for 5/16. I know I use a number 7 on the 1/4-20s. But anyway, I step drill it, and then I just tap the holes. Easiest way, no easy outs. My middle name is No Easy Outs. But anyway, this one I might be able to get a vice grip on it. Heat it up real good, and there's just enough here to grab it. All right, so I'll be back. Give you an update on what's going with this guy. 1956 Johnson 15, back to life. Yippee-yi-yo-ki-yay. Talk to you soon. Thanks for watching.